Welcome and welcome back to everyone joining us on Rooted to Thrive, conversations that elevate our humanity podcast. It's your girl, it's your friend, Professor P, Rochelle Peterson-Ansari. Today, we have Akil Parker. First and foremost, Akil is a partner, father of three, and the founder of All This Math. Write it down, y'all. Allthismath.com, which is a tutoring and educational consulting company that also hosts parent workshops. Akil is retired from teaching in public schools. I think he's been recorded saying that he retired from the front lines and went behind the scenes. I would still say he's on the front lines, and you'll see why by the end of this. And he has actually also taught pretty regularly as an adjunct professor at multiple institutions and more recently at Cheney University here in Pennsylvania. And now Akil is an author of How to Use All This Math, Volume 1. So you know what that means. It's coming. Another volume is coming.
Mm-hmm.
So Akil and I, we met at LaSalle University, where we both worked at the time. And there was an instant connection for me, Akil. I don't know if I ever told you that, but it was an instant connection through our love of learning, teaching, and our unrelenting missions to help Black people and all children thrive, and in ways that schooling gets in the way of it for our children, for our youth, and learners of all ages to thrive. So, Akil, I want to thank you for agreeing to have this conversation with me today. How are you doing, bro?
I'm doing excellent. I'm doing
Good.
excellent. Good to see you again. It's been a minute.
Yes, yes, it has. Well, before we get started talking about beyond the numbers, transforming how we think about mathematics, can you talk to us a little bit about, like, before you were a math educator, who were you becoming as a young learner?
Like you mean like during my K through 12 experience?
Sure.
So I was a child. I was a child of educators.
Mm.
My parents were well, my mother was an educator for a short period of time, but my father still is an educator to this day. He's been a high school teacher for about 40 years now, 40 plus years. And, growing up in that household, education was always, very important. It was instilled in myself and my siblings, the value of it. And so I always wanted to do well, always wanted to excel. And one of those students that typically got strong grades, A's and B's, special admission, schooling, um, uh, highest class for this, highest class for that, that type of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
always wanted to do well. And I'm also a very competitive person anyway. So one of the ways in which I compete is through academic performance.
Yes.
Always
Yeah.
that. So that kind of molded me into the type of adult that I became.
Mm-hmm.
Education is still important, but I will say I never intended on becoming an educator. That was never the goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I kind of fell into, and I'm very glad that happened. It's like a happy accident, because it was
Okay.
one of the best decisions I ever made was to become a teacher and to become an educator and a math educator at that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think my K through 12 experience really helped me to just develop my learning ability, my work ethic, my study habits, and things of that nature. And those are some of the things I try to pass on to not only my own children, but children that I tutor, children that I've taught, adults that I've taught, and in the resource that I pour that into the resources that I create for the community now through all this math.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had the experience of, when your parents are educators, education is going to be more than likely a part of home life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But like almost beyond homework help, would you say?
Yeah, because we're just having the types of conversations about the topics that I was learning in class. Those
Mhm.
were like normal conversations in my household, just like at the dinner table, or just like riding in the car with my dad or with my parents going somewhere. Those types of things would come up. So when I would encounter these topics, these types of topics in school, whether it have been in middle school or elementary school, it was like a continuation. So I think one of the things my parents did was, how people always say, it starts in the home.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know how to make it start in the home, but my parents did a good job of, making education start in the home, and they learned because they had learned and been taught how to do that. And
Yeah.
else I recognize, like, oftentimes in the community, people throw that around like this is, as a critique of Black parents, especially, like, it's supposed to start in the home, it's supposed to start in the home, without taking into consideration that everybody doesn't know what that's supposed to look like or how to do that. So I give all people grace, and I also make attempts to try to teach people and show people, okay, this is how it starts in the home. This is how you prepare your children for math class. So when they go into math class, they're not uncomfortable, they're not intimidated, they're not anxious. The math phobia is never going to have a chance to kick in because they're already familiar with the content. So, between home and school, there's a connection. Each
Yes.
location is supplementing the other. Home is supplementing school, and school is supplementing home. Um,
Right.
it was like, that was my experience. That was the experience me and my siblings had growing up, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and you made a good point. So, I was one of those high achievers as well, right? But my parents were not educators. So, I grew up with someone asking, how was school? What do you like today? What did you like? Now, I liked all of it, so there wasn't much, to talk about beyond what I liked, but I didn't experience many challenges. I could do a lot of things independently. So as an adult, I didn't necessarily learn from home, right, how to approach it with children and my grandchildren,
Hmm.
just as, from a parenting perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's different. So that's a differentiator for you because you are bringing that knowledge, like how parents actually helped instill confidence in their
Yeah.
children around even subjects. I don't know, like they were educators, but they may not have loved math themselves, right?
Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. My dad wasn't as strong in math. My mom,
Okay.
mom was pretty strong in math. So
Hmm.
if I needed assistance in math, she was the go-to person, for,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
dad had other strengths, other subject matter, social studies,
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm. And what a lot of families forget is that the curriculum is changing. My goodness, the way I learned math, just the basics, is different.
Yeah.
And teachers are telling, so I'm still in the schools now, with people who are preparing to be professional teachers, and people are based on a curriculum, are being assigned to tell students to show their work in a specific way that
Right.
is different than we learned.
Right. And a large issue with that is, when they're assigned homework that should be supervised by parents, grandparents, guardians, whoever, the parents have never been taught these methods. And
Right. Yeah.
schools not collectively made a concerted effort to ensure that the parents and guardians know the content. So what I realized was, okay, well, this is a void in, in preparation. So
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for all this math to provide this, and that kind of was the outgrowth. That's where the outgrowth of the parent math. I call them the new math parent workshops, where they
Okay.
from a lot of the complaints by parents about the so-called new math, and I call it so-called because it's not really new technically, even though it may be new to a certain individual or a certain parent. Because if you learned how to do long division 30 years ago, and now your child is responsible for using the partial quotients method or the box method for division or a division area model or something like that, then that may be new to you.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. But I'm always of the opinion that, children should have multiple methods of problem solving as opposed to
Mm.
locked into one. And I think even myself, like I learned long division when I was in the third grade. I remember Miss Johnson's class, rest her soul. She taught me long division, and it was one method. Um, and while I appreciate learning that one method, I think myself and my peers would have been better off had we learned multiple methods. But that just wasn't what the curriculum called for back then.
Right.
It was sufficient just to learn, at least in the school I attended, for us to just learn the one method, just learn long division. And
Mm.
that's something that I want parents to think about it in that context, as if, because oftentimes the fact that children are being exposed to different methods of problem solving and different methods of division and multiplication and addition and subtraction, that is seen as as a punishment. Whereas I
Mm.
see it as a punishment for children to be limited and only being taught one method when they're like 6 or 7 or 8 different methods that they could learn, because it's going to overall make them more fluent in mathematics generally anyway. It's similar
Yeah.
to driving. Like, if you only know one way to get from your house to your job, then what happens when there's a traffic jam? What happens when there's
Right.
construction going on? What happens when the street is blocked? What are you going to do? How are you going to get to work? So you need to
Mm.
know multiple ways, and you need to be able to, possess the critical thinking ability necessary to know which of those ways is the most appropriate based
Yeah.
on different variables. So,
Mhm.
and that, that right there, that's an algebraic or mathematical way of thinking. So when people ask, well, when am I going to use algebra? When am I going to use this in real life? Well, just deciding what the best way to travel to get to your house is a form of using algebra, because there are many variables, because maybe this particular route is not as good during rush hour, but this other route is a great route because there's going to be less traffic. Or maybe, oh, you got to take into consideration, is there a football game today? Is it Sunday? Is there a basketball game? So where's the traffic going? Or was there a 10K run? Is the street blocked off? These are all variables that we take into consideration. And whether people realize it or not, our brains are using an algebraic process when we consider all these different variables or factors. So I want people to consider that too. That this is only one of many examples when we are using the math that we're taught, even if our teacher may not have explicitly said, "Okay, in the future, this is how you're going to use the mathematics." That's one of the ways.
I love it. I love that. I just told you before we got on this
Yeah, yeah,
that I don't know how I use math. And I'm like, oh, I can tell my grandbabies, we're going to use algebra right
yeah.
now. I love that
Can I give
because,
you an example?
mhm, please.
Since we're on the topic, so one of the popular formulas in algebra is and also in physics, the distance rate time formula. So distance is equal to the rate of speed times time. Every time you are driving and you want to determine, do you have enough time to make a left turn when there's oncoming traffic, you're using that formula because you're considering the distance you are away from that car. You're also considering the rate of speed of that car, and that tells you, okay, do I have enough time to make this left turn?
I
Right?
love
Or
it.
on the highway, you might be on 76. Do I have enough time to switch lanes and get in front of this car that's behind me? Distance, rate, time. We're using that formula often, or even as a pedestrian. As a pedestrian, if you want to cross the street and a car is coming, do you have enough time to make it?
Mhm.
We don't want to get hit by a car, so
No, we don't.
we
And,
so
and
we're using these mathematical formulas all the time. It's just that a lot of often nobody has explicitly told us that this is what you're doing, but we're using that
right.
all the time. We're using y equals mx plus b all the time. Every time we calculate a paycheck, every time we calculate a cost for something. If there's like a set amount, like let's say, you rent a car, you pay this much up front, and then you're paying this much per day or per hour or whatever. That's y equals mx plus b.
Mm. I hear you, Akil. I hear you. I love that. I love it. I love that I've been using math all this time, didn't even know how, but it's important to know how in order to translate that to the next generation.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah. And I'm in a season of life where it's like multiple generations now that I can help support. I love that. Thank you so much. In addition to your, I don't know, I think you have like 1,000 videos on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah,
Yeah, I was devouring things like what was it, Air Jordan, Air Max,
yeah, yeah,
and then we were doing prisms. a
Yeah.
rectangular prism to calculate volume
Oh,
with
yeah.
the sneaker box. I love that. I was like, yes, I need that for my grand boys.
Yeah, and I'm trying to make the mathematics is one of the issues that mathematics suffers from in school is that it's presented in a way where it appears as though it's unrelatable and irrelevant. So, and again, I'm trying to empower parents,
Hmm.
but definitely parents because parents are often left out of the conversation.
Hmm.
So a child may encounter a situation in math class where they have to calculate the volume of a rectangular prism. Well, let's think,
Hmm.
what is a rectangular prism? What are some real life everyday examples? A shoebox is a rectangular prism. So this is something that I want to offer to parents. Like, listen, every time you buy your child a pair of shoes, a pair of sneakers, you don't have, they don't have to wait until, and this is an overarching theme with all this math. Your children don't have to wait until they get to school to learn these math concepts. They can do them right in the house with you in a safe and comfortable environment, and then school can become a space for practice of the things that you already taught them or exposed them to. So every
Right.
time you buy your child a pair of Air Max, pair of Air Jordans, pair of Harachis, whatever, New Balance, whatever, they can take a ruler, they can measure, and that's a skill even of itself. Measurement is a very important skill that a lot of people lack, unfortunately. Grown men and women, they can measure the length of the box, the width of the box, the height of the box. Those are your three dimensions. And then from there, you can calculate the volume of the box. So every time you buy a pair of shoes, you can do that exercise.
Mm.
When they see it in school, whether it be that same year or, the next school year or the year after, then, they'll know how to do it already because they did it in the house.
That's right. And that is a form of being culturally relevant,
Mm-hmm.
folks, right? Like relevant and responsive. Like essentially bring it, bring the concepts to something that the children, the youth are interested in and understand, right? They understand shoebox. They understand sneakers, being a sneakerhead. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, and I want to say this because I don't want to get dragged because I said my grandboys, right? Because some of my grand girls are sneakerheads too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, so for all of them, like all children of all genders, we are trying to help them just build confidence in an area that supports them in daily life and in leadership
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in leadership. Okay, well, I want to switch a little bit, still talking a little bit about this confidence and identity though. When did you realize that math wasn't neutral, that it shapes confidence and identity?
Um, when did I realize that it shapes confidence and identity?
Mm-hmm.
Probably just when I became a classroom teacher and I
Mm.
started to reflect more on my own experience as a student, as a math student. And I would, because I would think about how a lot of my students really weren't high achievers, and it's because they lacked the confidence. Not that they didn't have the intelligence or the ability or the capacity. They just, have been conditioned to believe that math was irrelevant and that they weren't going to use it in life. And also, I think a lot of them had a weak foundation in math in elementary school and also middle school. Because I started out as a high school teacher. So I'm getting students when they're in ninth, 10th, and 11th grade and so on. So, and I was seeing a lot of these learning gaps that they had. So that made me reflect on my own experience as a student and how I had benefited, as a child, not just in school, but also in my household, the support that I got and also seeing how many students do not have that type of support, you know, um, which also has, very long lasting consequences because once you kind of opt out of mathematics, what a lot of people don't realize is you're also opting out of a lot of careers, the job opportunities.
Yeah.
A lot of times, these are some of the more high paying, more lucrative job opportunities, which is really unfortunate. So, because once you say, well, I hate math and I'm never going to use math, well, you're also, as a result, consequentially, you're never going to be a doctor. You're never going to be a registered nurse. You're never going to be a mechanical engineer, civil engineer, industrial engineer, computer engineer. computer scientists probably. None of that's going to happen. Because those mathematics is a gatekeeper toward those types of opportunities. And even in business, I would say a lot of people I find that may have not had as much success, in formal academic settings. They have an intention on becoming entrepreneurs. Well, I
Mhm.
firm belief that a lot of businesses fail um, because of a lack of mathematical understanding and not knowing how to forecast, not knowing, how to plan properly, not knowing how to budget, not knowing how to, use mathematics and algebra in order to make sound business decisions.
Mhm.
Situations where people are like, grand opening, grand closing, or like, why did you take this much money toward this part of the business and you didn't allocate enough for this part of the business? Well, that's why you're not able to stay open. Or, why are you buying, if you have a restaurant and you're selling, food, why are you spending this much for salmon from this distributor? Why not go to another distributor, or how did you even pick your price points? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
equilibrium, price point, in order to maximize profit without it being too expensive where people start to say, no, I can't go there because they charge too high, they cost too much.
Mhm.
Algebra,
Mhm.
and there are examples that are in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 textbooks right now that you can find, that anybody can find, that model these types of circumstances. So I
Yeah.
really want for people to stop running away from the math, because
Mm.
running away from the math, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Mhm.
Not doing yourself any favors. It's a very invaluable and highly important skill. And another reason is, a lot of us that are adults, we're parents, we're grandparents, we're uncles, we're aunts, and we're setting a poor example for the young people. So if for no other reason, we as adults should pretty much, for lack of a better term, grow up and embrace the math so we can set a better example for the young people. Because the young people are watching us and they're like, look, my favorite auntie or my favorite uncle with the nice car and the nice house, well, they always talking about how they don't like math and they was never good at math. And look at them, look at their life. They seem to be from the outside living pretty well, but you don't know the details of that situation, or, you don't know that, they may be leveraged, they may be in debt. Sure, the house looks nice, everything looks great on the surface, but you don't know how that's being paid for, or if it's actually being paid for. You, children don't know that. The children just know, oh, well, I like going over their house because they got all the TVs in every room and they got the nice car and the video game systems and all that type stuff. But so they're looking to us, for how they should embrace these subjects such as mathematics. So we gotta set a better example. Gotta set a better example and start to embrace the math so they'll want to.
I appreciate that. I have to say, so I was always strong in math, in mathematics when I had to take it in class, but because I did not have a lot of real world application, it just didn't, in my mind, didn't stick, right? So obviously it did, because you're educating me today that it did, but I didn't know that it did. And as a business owner, fortunately, I'm great with budgeting. I would call myself a wise steward of my finances,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yes, my accountant has told me that many people that they worked with, they get large sums of money at one time, it's gone in a month.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to make sure that thing is worth 6 months, right? Or covers a year of expenses for the business and for myself. But when you start using certain terminology like forecasting, I
Mm-hmm.
started creeping back. And I was like, it's because I thought that I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
It's just because I thought I didn't know how to do it. Because, yes, in going through business planning courses, which I recommend for everyone, you do some sales forecasting. It's just not something others can do for you. It's
Right.
also not what AI can do for you because you have to bring some knowledge of your customers to that equation, to be honest, right?
Right.
But you can use that tool, right? Like to give you a framework for what does that look like for a company like yours.
Hmm.
But I know that there's other people who, so my company does educational consulting, training, coaching, right? But I know that there's somebody out there who is a visual artist, who is, a performing artist who's saying, oh no, that is absolutely not me. And they need to hear this, right? Like that
Yeah.
there are tools there and you likely do know how to do it. You
Yeah.
just haven't been given the language for it until now.
Right. And speaking of language, a lot of terms, so there's definition and then there's connotation. The connotation of a lot of terms are presented to us as scary and intimidating
On purpose.
on purpose. Like math
Mhm,
is marketed as scary and intimidating.
mhm,
And, I want a lot of people to think about that and just start to consider, like, well, why am I scared of this? Why
mhm,
like, and to be honest, like I've dealt with like math anxiety. I
mhm,
might have a situation. The difference between me and a lot of people though is I'm able to immediately remind myself that I've had a lot of success at this. Like I've been teaching math for 20 years. So I'm able to like reflect and say bro, you tripping. What is wrong with you? Like if you don't know it right now, or if you just
mhm,
haven't forgot it, you can figure this out. Like if a student comes to me and I'm about to start tutoring and they send their homework over in advance and I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is this? All right. And then that math anxiety might creep in, but
mhm,
it dissipates because I remind myself, oh, ah, I can figure this out. I know there's some videos, or maybe it's something that I might jog my memory and realize, wait, no, I taught this before. This looks familiar. Maybe it's been 10 years, maybe it's been 15 years, but I've done it. I've taught other people how to do this. So why should I be nervous about something that I've actually already been proficient at? But like a lot of things, mathematics is similar to many things in that if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
yeah.
But I
Yeah. Yeah.
put that's another important message too, that
Mhm,
even myself with this high level of proficiency in mathematics, I get scared of it sometimes. I get intimidated of it sometimes. So if it can happen, if it happens to me, it happens to the best of us. So for the person that's watching this, don't feel like, well, I'm scared of math, so there's no hope for me. Like, no, there's hope for you because oftentimes when we encounter people that achieve that perform at a high level at a certain thing, we have this belief that they were born that way, or
mm,
they never had to work hard for it. Right.
right.
And I wasn't born like that. Like I've had to work. Like I used to be in class, in high school and whatnot, and kind of be envious of some of my classmates that seemed like they would just get it and they didn't have to
Mm,
go home and study a lot. I was a person I had to go home and study and practice. And then
mhm,
I would get it and then I would know it and I'd master it. But I had to put the work in. Whereas some people I know didn't necessarily have to put as much work in. Right.
yeah.
So it's important for people to understand that too. Like, and I'm not that unique. I know a lot of my colleagues and people that are math educators and professors and high school teachers, middle school teachers, and they also have had to put the work in. And
Yeah.
it be math topics that they're not as strong in. And another thing, we also make mistakes. Like,
Mhm,
I might be in a tutoring session and I might do a problem wrong, and my student is, they did it right, and I'm looking at them like, well, how'd you get that? And then I'm thinking that they're wrong, and then I look at my work and I'm like, oh, my bad. like wrong. You were right. You know.
right.
So it happens.
Akil, you mentioned so many things that I could tap into. Like, the math teacher, the math educator, the math business owner, tutoring and consulting business owner can still get anxiety.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what came to mind immediately was, yeah, underneath that for many of us is this need to not make mistakes and right and not experiment, not see our getting it wrong as experimentation, because when you experiment, right,
Yes.
it's not right the first
Yeah.
time. Go ahead, I see you want to say something.
There's a sister in Baltimore. She runs this program called Divaneering, where she uses she's an engineer. She's an engineer by trade, graduate of Morgan State University, and like myself, she's a little younger than me though. But she has this program called Divaneering where she teaches engineering concepts to young women through like cosmetology, through designing jewelry, things of that nature. And she put me onto this term from engineering called an iterative process. right? Where the iterative process, what it basically means is like you have to go through the steps in the process and you have to get things wrong in order to get it right. But getting it wrong is actually part of the process. So engineers, they welcome that. Whereas like scientists do the same thing. Like when
Mm-hmm.
out with a cure for something or this, drug that's gonna like, save humanity or whatever, right? We don't ever talk about the 30,000 or 40,000 trials where they messed it up and didn't find the right drug or didn't find the right combination of chemicals, right? We only talk about, oh, they found a cure for this or they found a new drug. But in mathematics, we should do the same thing. Like you got to make the mistakes. You got to
That's
make
right.
mistakes, right? And this is something I'm learning. And a lot of times early in my teaching career, I made the mistake of, and I've been talking to my therapist about this recently too, about perfectionism. How perfection
Mm-hmm.
is an enemy. You know what I mean? It's held me back. It has helped me in certain ways in my life in my past, but it's also held me back in many ways. Because with perfectionism, you end up not wanting to do the thing if you have a fear that it's not going to be perfect. So that leads
Right.
to procrastination, which sometimes leads to stagnation, and you just never end up doing nothing, right? So with the with the bath, like we have to get away from this need to be perfect and just do the work, just do the problems and
That's
welcome
right.
the wrong answers, right?
That's right.
It's as if when people say fail forward, like you'll get the wrong answer, that's fine, but and actually like I sometimes like when students get the wrong answer because then we can have a rich conversation about why was your answer wrong. Because I want you to be able to explain to me why your answer was wrong. Because then you can actually demonstrate to me that you really understand what's going on if you can tell
Mm-hmm.
me why I was wrong. I
That's right.
that then a person just give me the right answer, and that becomes even more important nowadays with the advent and the proliferation of AI, right? Because now it's so easy to just cheat and just get the answer. So
Mm-hmm.
that will give the correct answer, but they might have cheated. And even if they didn't cheat, they should know how to explain why the answer is right and what their process was.
Right. Exactly.
Aren't being charged with having to explain their process. And
Mm.
your process is very important. Regardless of, it's just like showing your work. Explaining your work is similar. Whether you got a wrong answer or a right answer, like
Mm-hmm.
explain it to me. We got to be able to explain it.
Exactly. Exactly. And like you said, there are multiple ways to get there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
This speaks again to what can happen to us. We fall into some traps through the type of schooling that we had, the messaging we get from family, from people in our environment in the community, that there is this misconception of, it's a fallacy that there's anything but, you know, anything that is perfection. Actually, it doesn't exist.
right, right.
And right, and it does cause people to pull back. I just had to say a little bit about that because that has been something that has run my entire life, and I am so glad you talked about talking to a therapist about it,
Yeah,
because through therapy and some other introspection, I realized that I was a perfectionist years ago and would always say that I was one in recovery, but I realized how steep that mountain is to climb to recover from that, because it's everywhere. It's like all these stimuli telling us that that thing exists when it doesn't.
right,
Like, and
right.
and one of the main places is when we're in schools, get the right answer, do
Yeah,
it the right way.
yeah,
Even though, like, I'm shocked that anybody comes out and can be an engineer. I think that because they think around having problems to solve and not getting it right at first,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like they thrive on that.
I think of it as like in mathematics, like infinity. Like infinity,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's not an actual tangible number.
Right.
Like
That's right.
that's how I think of perfection. Perfection is something. I mean, maybe we what was it something I came up with a little like a cliche. We can strive for it, but we're never going to reach it though.
Correct. Right.
We want constant improvement because you can think of constant improvement as striving for perfection, but while with the understanding that you're never going to reach it, you know.
Right. That's right. Yeah, and reach for the moon. You'll hit the
It,
stars.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Well, listen, I want us to really, there is something that's burning, right? For me to know, for you to, I want you to talk about more too, and that is how you uh, integrate Black history, Kwanzaa, these culturally grounded concepts into mathematics.
So I love talking about that. So that would
Yeah.
be, you're referring to histamatics, and
Yes.
the term that I coined, where I basically use Black history to teach mathematics, and I use mathematics to teach Black history. And
Mhm.
it came about as an actual teaching framework in around 2019, when I decided to, well, there was a conference that I wanted to present at. It was called the Teaching Black History Conference. And it was kind of on theme, according, it was related to the theme of the conference. So I
Mhm.
decided to actually sit down and kind of formalize something that I had been doing since 2005 when I started my teaching career, because I was always the math teacher, whether it was a geometry class, a pre-cal class, a calculus, a stats, or algebra 1 class, where my students inevitably would say to me, Mr. Parker, you should have been an African-American history teacher. And the reason that they would say that is because a lot of the example problems that I would make up, the do now questions, would involve like Black history figures. So, because I don't want my children to have to wait until February to talk about Black history, because I believe
Right.
be studying and engaging with Black history 24/7, 365, 12 months out the year, right? So there's 5 elements to it, and I use different methods of using Black history to teach math. For example, if I'm teaching arithmetic to children,
Mhm.
I may create an addition problem that has a sum of 1,791. And I'm doing that because the year 1791 is when the Haitian Revolution started. So then that creates a segue for us to have a conversation about Toussaint Louverture, Cecil Fatima, Boukman Dutty, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and the Haitian Revolution. And then, or a problem with 1,804 as the sum or the difference or the product or the quotient, because then we can talk about when the Haitian Revolution ended, or maybe 381 might be a sum or a difference because the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 lasted for 381 days from 1955 to 1956. So just using the numbers, and I kind of think of it as, the gamblers would say, I've heard gamblers say this, like, don't leave money on the table, right?
Right.
Throughout my teaching career, I've, figuratively left a lot of money on the table because a lot of the numbers that I was dealing with in my math classes were related to and relevant to significant historical events or significant historical figures. And I could have just easily said, oh, well, that's the birth date of Paul Robeson, or that's the birth date of Asada Shakur. And then I
Mhm.
could have just been having conversations just from the numbers, like the relevancy through the numbers, right? Another element is, Black mathematicians. Black mathematicians, I think one of the things that's very basic, but it's kind of profound, but it's basic at the same time, is I think our children don't think they can, strive and excel in mathematics because they don't see enough Black people that do excel and strive in mathematics. They don't know enough Black mathematicians. They know plenty of Black basketball players, football players, rappers, singers, dancers, comedians. Um, Maybe unfortunately, like drug dealers in their community. These are the things they see, right? So the optics is there. So it naturally would make any person think, oh, I can do that too because this is what I see. I believe that if our children see more Black mathematicians, then they'll think, oh, well, I should be able to strive in mathematics as well. And then maybe not to be a mathematician, but to become strong and comfortable with mathematics. And then I can go be an engineer. Then I can go be the doctor. Then I can go be the scientist. I can be the architect. I can be the computer scientist. I can do a lot of these different things. I can be a lawyer. There's a lot of
Mhm.
logic in law. A lot of people underestimate the connection between mathematics and the legal practice. There's logic in law. Logic is part of geometry, right?
Mhm.
Also, I've heard a statistic that I need to confirm, but the largest percentage of people that score the highest on the LSAT exam are mathematics and stats majors, right? From college. I've heard that statistic. I want to confirm it, but it seems
Mhm.
plausible because of, logic. It's about logic, and logic is part of geometry. There's logic in algebra, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another part. Black math exemplars. Then there's statistics of the African experience. Just talking about statistics, but from based on our experience, like what our historical experience.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that comes to mind is very important is how the media will manipulate and create narrative in order to reaffirm and reinforce our inferiority. Whereas they'll take a negative behavior, which is actually an outlier, which only may be enacted by a small portion of the population. That's called an outlier. In statistics, that's an outlier. That's not a norm. That's not the median. That's not the mean. But the way it's marketed, you would think, oh, that's how all Black people act. No, that's not. And then even with that, okay, now we get to the algebra. Y equals mx plus b. Y is the dependent variable. X is the independent variable. What are the environmental factors that may cause this negative antisocial behavior that we see in our communities? Oftentimes, there are very wealthy, well-to-do white people, establishment people, government entities, corporations that are sitting behind the scenes very safely, creating conditions that lead to the negative behavior. But yet we often only want to look at, well, these Black people are just being trifling. Look at them. Look at them. Well, why are they being trifling? Right. And I would argue that, well, anybody that was in that situation would potentially act that way. So let's really get to the source of the problem. Let's find out who the real culprit is, not the dependent variable. Let's look at the independent variable that's actually starting this. Right. So, and these are different ways to use mathematics to address our historical experience, our sociological experience, and what have you. And also like creating word problems. One of the things I've been able to do is I partnered with a nonprofit, actually my father's nonprofit, the William J. Watkins Senior Educational Institute. For the last 2 summers, I've taught the histamatics summer program, where what I do is I take books that I just think young Black children should be exposed to. Not just young Black children, but Black people in general should be exposed to, like Autobiography of Malcolm X, Asada, Miseducation of the Negro, Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, Black Bourgeoisie by E. Franklin Frazier. Just some of those books come to mind. We've covered in the excerpts of them in the past couple of summers. And I create math word problems based on the content in those books. So the students get actually 3 things. They get to practice the math skills. They get practice with critical reading, right? And they get exposed to the history all at the same time. So that's another element, African-centered math word problems. So just picking any book and, that we want to expose children to, and just creating math word problems, based on the information. We read the also Douglas's first autobiography, The Narrative of Frederick Douglass. He published in 1845, right after he had escaped. And one of the things we talk about is, like, again, the distance, rate, time formula. So he was in Talbot County, and he got sent to Baltimore at one point in his early life. That's when the famous portion of that book where the woman who lived in the house, the Master Auld's mistress, she was trying to teach him how to read, and then her husband came home and basically cussed her out and was like, "What is wrong with you? We can't teach him how to read." And then Douglas realizes something. He says, "Oh, knowledge makes you unfit to be a slave." Right. So I created a word problem. We say, well, if you were traveling from Talbot County in Maryland, on the eastern shore of Maryland, to Baltimore at 65 miles per hour average, let's say, knowing the distance, we look up the distance. We go online and do the research, find the distance between the 2 cities, or the county to the city. How long should it take you? So it's a way to practice using the distance, rate, time formula, and also reinforce that biographical information about Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
And speaking to that point, that Douglas quote, knowledge making you unfit to be a slave, a lot of times we think of it only in terms of reading, like being able to read. But I would also add, I agree with that, but I would also add that the lack of math literacy or having math literacy makes you unfit to be a slave. because
Mhm.
once you have math literacy, then you're able to critically think at a deeper level. You're able to do analytical reasoning at a deeper level, and you're able to problem solve. And then you start asking questions, and then you become problematic in an oppressive environment. Because, like, you're going to actually question what's going on around you, because because everything becomes an equation to you. And you're going to recognize contradictions. You're going to say, oh, well, the left side of this equation does not equal the right side, or this is not going to lead to this outcome. But yet you, politician, are telling me that if we do this, then this is going to be the outcome. No, mathematically, I know that makes no sense. You're either ignorant yourself or you're very intelligent, but you're dishonest and you're lying to me and lying to. And this is how mathematics empowers us. So when the young children say, I'm never going to use this, why do I? That's what those in power that want to oppress us want us to think, because they want us to be able to ask certain questions or challenge the status quo. They want us
Yes.
to just get along, go along to get along. Just don't ask no questions, don't make no waves. They want us to think that we don't need it.
That's right. And I want to just, if I may, just interject right here that there are a number of us who are um, working to support that, but don't know it, right? Like people, right? Teachers show up to teach. They say, "I love children," but you need to think about yourself critically as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how what you're doing, is it really empowering everyone who, these parents and grandparents and aunties and uncles have entrusted to you? Yes, to grow and empower through their intellectual development
Right.
and empower their cultural identity, like their identity, period. You don't have to put cultural in front of it because everybody thinks something different. But anyway, this is such a powerful conversation about how it's all intertwined.
All of
I,
it.
yes, all
Yeah.
of it's intertwined. I wish I could. Well, now I have this to refer back to in terms of the mathematics of it all. But I mean, I think there is something sexy about talking about math and sociology all at the same time.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just it shows our ultimate brilliance. Yes.
Yeah.
So before we begin to close our conversation, you've touched on so much. I mean, you talked about community leadership, right? When families are empowered,
Mm-hmm.
when the children and youth are empowered. There's relational leadership in the ecosystem of our collective genius. Yes, when we empower our families, ourselves around the use of mathematics. Now, this work you're doing is obviously mission driven.
Yes.
Yes. So I want to know, what do you do to even protect your wellness while you're doing this equity centered work?
That's a good question. And when I hear that question, this has been asked of me before, and it's kind of difficult to answer because doing the work, you know what it's like? It's like a car battery, right? When the engine runs, it recharges the battery.
Hmm.
I think that's a good metaphor for like my positioning because and how I actually feel about it. And people are often surprised when I respond in that way because I say like doing the work itself is what keeps me sane, right? I mean, there's the aspect of I'm helping the community. I know the outcome. I know the dividends that being math literate will pay and can pay. I know how it's a protective measure. Just like this is why I want parents to become more involved in this because as parents, we are protectors, mothers and fathers, we're protectors, we want to protect our children. One of the best ways to protect our children is to provide them with knowledge, impart knowledge to them so that they can make better choices. Because a lot of children grow up to be adults and they end up in harmful situations because they're making poor choices. But they're making, if we reverse engineer and back map, We realize that they're making poor choices because of ignorance and what they may not have learned as a child. So one of the best things we could do is like, prepare our children by teaching them. So I want for parents and, aunties, uncles, grandparents, godparents, whoever, the elders in the block in the community that are just respected and appreciated, to be able to protect the children by teaching them these skills. And knowing that I'm doing that, especially when, because a lot of people will tell me like, keep doing what you're doing, man. Like, we appreciate, see what you're doing. And that gives me life.
Yes.
That it's like, that it's worth it, and it's working. And also, it's a lot of times it's protracted work, whereas, seeds are planted. Like I have students that are in their 30s now. They were in my classroom when they were like 13 or 14, once upon a time. I may see them in person, in the street, in the grocery store, wherever, in traffic. I may see them on social media, and they may just send me a DM on social media like, yo, man, like I was just thinking the other day about when I was in the 9th grade and I was in your class and you said this, or you held me accountable, and, I was a basketball star and a lot of people would have just let me slide by and you didn't. And because you told me how important this was for me to understand algebra because you knew I was going to need it. And he was like, yeah, man, lo and behold, I went to college and I had to take that class and it made sense to me. And I still remember to this day some of the things you said to break down the different algebra concepts to make it make sense for me and all of us. So those are things that I think having those experiences, those things keep me sane and keep me healthy. I think the work itself is good for my mental health.
Yes.
Even with it can be stressful, and then, I mean, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. So that has its own, own stress in and of itself. But I think the type of work that I'm doing, because it's mission driven and because I believe in the positivity, and the positive benefit to, the larger community, it just makes me feel good to be able to do it. And a bit resource. And, my cousin, called me up, and it's funny because he's a grown man. Like, he's a grown man, like a dean of students at a whole middle school. But I still think of him as my little cousin, because he's still my little cousin, like, because he's 15 years younger than me or whatever. He called me up because he was trying to help his son with some math problems that were his homework. And so I was able to help him, and I like that. That makes me feel good, just be that resource. Because I also realized, like, I don't take it for granted. Like, a lot of people don't have somebody in their phone contact list that they can just call randomly that can help them with some math. I like being that person, and because it feels good, and I like to be able to provide that type of help, which is why I created the YouTube channel. So it's like, you can go get the help, and it's free. And it's I do offer tutoring. That's but everybody can't afford it. And I also don't have time to tutor everybody. And, my son also tutors with me. My oldest son, who's a junior in college, he tutors too. The two of us don't have time to tutor everybody. So I came up with the idea for the YouTube channel, so you can get the same quality of instruction, but just in a pre-recorded video that's available as long as you have internet access. So yeah, that's what I would say. I would say, it's like I just thought of that. I've never said that before, about that car battery metaphor. I think that's the ancestors working through me.
Yes,
it makes sense. Yeah, like, the car battery gets recharged when the engine is running.
That's right. Yes, I love it. And I love that your engine is running. I want you to share with folks, you touched on this a bit already, but just share your vision. Like, if culturally grounded math became the norm, what do you envision?
So I envision communities will look different because definitely be a different level of civic engagement, because we'd start to be able to question, okay, well, what is happening in city council? What are these bills? What are these laws? What's happening at the state government level? What are those bills, and what kind of conversations are they doing? Like, how much funding is being allocated? And we'd be able to participate in these conversations well in advance of when it's the end of the decision-making process. And we'd be able to plan for it, right? It might affect who we elect in the first place, who we end up voting for, and also on the federal level as well. We, deal with corporations differently,
Mhm.
because we would know as much as the mathematicians that they hire. And this is something else I want people to understand. We would know just as much as the mathematicians that the corporations are hiring, what they know and what they're doing. That's key, because to the people that say, I'm never going to need math, I'm not going to use this, this is not going to have any bearing on my life, that's fine. Let's say we accept that. However, you have to consider the people that are using math and what are they using it for? We're all living on the same earth. They're using math and they're working for corporations that affect our lives. They're working for government entities that affect our lives. So what we do is, by saying that you're not concerned about math, it's similar to people that say, I'm not into politics. It's fine. You can believe that you're not into, you can be not into politics all you want, but politics is into you, because political decisions affect whether you're going to have clean water to drink, to take a bath and a shower with. It's going to affect whether you have heat that comes in your house. It's going to affect whether, you have to pay a fee to, drive down Broad Street. Somebody's cameras, speed cameras, right? Politics affects every aspect of your life. So you can't just say, what is it, an ostrich that digs his head in the sand?
Mhm.
You can't just say, well, I'm not involved in that. It's still affecting you. So mathematics is similar to that. Like, mathematical decisions affect all of our lives. So we shouldn't, I don't think we should say, well, I'm just not into math,
Right.
because somebody is into the people that are into math are making
Mm.
choices that are going to affect you regardless. So you
Mm.
learn it so that therefore you be able to anticipate what decisions are going to be made, because algorithms are being created, formulas are being used to do projections about, what's going to happen. So I think that my vision, and I may not live to see this, and that's fine, because this is long-term work. Just like I feel like I'm carrying on a tradition from ancestors that have long passed physically. I've been, influenced by a lot of people such as, like, Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, Marcus Garvey, people like that. I'm just carrying on tradition, and I feel as though I'm just playing my part. But the goal is for there to be a world where people are able to embrace their full humanity and be able to, advocate for themselves and for their communities collectively, and
Yes.
bullied. And mathematical awareness is a tool that can help us to not be bullied,
Oh, come on now.
you know?
Say it for the people in the back of the room. I love that. Akil, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our folks. And I hope you keep that battery charged. Keep that battery charged to fuel you and to also leave a legacy of others who can teach like you, right? Like, that's a lane. I don't know if you've considered it yet, to teach other people to do what you're doing,
The train
right?
the trainer model. Yeah,
Yes, get
yeah.
some more people out there training on the, what did you call it? The histomath,
Histamatics.
the histamatics,
Histamatics.
the histamatics. Yes, teach the framework so so you can reach all corners of the planet, because it's necessary. Now, before we go, can you tell people where they can find you after this episode? Where can we get our hands on that book?
Mhm.
Yes.
So the website, and my website was just updated. So check it out. I think it's pretty nice. Allthismath.com for
Mhm.
tutoring. You can contact me through the website. Also for copies of the book, there's a link to the to where you can purchase copies of How to Use All This Math Volume 1. There's a link on the website also. Um, Go to the YouTube channel. Definitely subscribe, like, and share the YouTube channel. You'll see over 1,000 videos currently on topics from arithmetic all the way up to calculus. Some of the videos I have my youngest son Kwame featured in some of the videos. Also my daughter Asada, she's featured in some of the videos, because I'm also modeling for parents how, I'm a math teacher, I'm a mathematician, a math professor, but I'm a father first. So I'm showing the example of, this is what we as fathers, have a responsibility to do for our children, teach our children math. Also on the social media, other social media networks, TikTok, all this math, Instagram, all this math, Facebook, all this math as well. So yeah, please, follow me on social media, look at some of the content. You're on the social media, especially, you'll see a lot of clips of me having conversations like this, where I'm trying to provide positive propaganda around mathematics because we are so overwhelmed and bombarded from birth with negative propaganda around math, which makes us scared of it. And I'm just here to like challenge all of that and just talk differently about it. And I think it's just important for Black people to see Black people having positive conversations around math. We won't see enough of that. We see it a lot. Oftentimes, the conversations we do see, and even from celebrities, from Black celebrities, talking about how math was irrelevant. They never needed it. They were never good at it. And then you hear everyday people talking about math, kind of trauma bonding about how they hated math, and it's unfortunate that we had negative experiences, but I'm trying to change the narrative and have us have positive conversations about mathematics in our community. So our children will hear these conversations and then they'll believe that they can do the math, and not feel deflated when they're in math class and they make a mistake or they get a problem, get an answer wrong. Because you're supposed to get answers wrong. That's part of the process I talked about earlier. Getting wrong answers is part of the process. And actually, that resonates with me because I wish, even though I did well overall in my school experience, I wish somebody had said that to me. That getting answers is part of the process. You don't want to end up getting wrong answers, but that's part of the process. That's how we learn.
That's right.
Have to do. I remember I tell people this before the days of everybody having GPS in our cars and on our phones. When somebody would give you directions to their house and you had to write them down, and driving and trying to look at a piece of paper at the same time, I would almost always make a mistake and go the wrong way. The first visiting somebody's house. But then I would learn from the mistake and I would never get lost ever again.
Right. That's right.
Sometimes you got to get it wrong first. That's part of the process.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of teachers do this, unfortunately. Teachers have this expectation for children, and we judge their level of understanding. We judge their academic ability based on whether they can be introduced to a topic and never get it wrong. But they're supposed to get it wrong. That's part of the learning process. And children have to become comfortable with getting it wrong, just like in science. In science, your experiment might go wrong. It's supposed to go wrong. Engineering is supposed to go wrong, right? Mathematics is no different. So we got to start pushing that idea to young people. And parents got to consider that too, because I think if parents consider that approach, that'll lead to a lot less contentious situations with homework sessions because parents expect for the children to just get it right. And I've been guilty of this too. So I'm speaking from experience. I'm not immune. I'm not above that. I've yelled at all of my children, for not. So this is something I'm also trying to unlearn. And I'm a professional. So, I want everybody to feel encouraged because they can say, well, dang, he's a professional and even he has that problem, right?
Right.
We're all in this together. We're all in this boat together. It's a process of me to get over that because I grew up thinking that it wasn't okay to make mistakes, So
exactly. That's the issue, right? That it is okay to make mistakes. I heard it said recently, someone said it's the curse of being the A student, right? Like it's hard for us to even try some new things because we're going to start as even a D student, right? Or a C student, and it causes extreme discomfort for people who are high achievers. And we're high achievers in some area of our life. Whether the rest of the world acknowledges it in mass or not is a different story.
Right. It's like if I could say add to that too. It's like being a teenager and you may have been out at the mall, I might have been out at the mall with my homeboys and I saw a pretty girl, but I didn't want to get rejected by her. So I just didn't talk to her. I didn't try to talk to her. Right. So of course I didn't get her number. Right. But I also didn't get rejected by her. But I should take the risk. As we would say. So, hopefully gratefully I grew into that. Right. Because we would say, as I got a little older, I realized well, you're a man for trying.
Yeah.
You're a man for trying. That's what me and my friends, you're a man for trying. right? But a lot of people won't even try because of the fear of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to
Fear
math.
wrong.
Classes like, nah, I'm not gonna raise my hand. I'm not gonna try because I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah. And
But
you
you
know
got
what? Mhm.
good.
Right. No, I was just going to say this conversation is important for young people. It's important for parents. And I'm going to say for the educator, it is so critical to understand that many of us who chose education were high achievers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so our identity impacts the people who are we're attempting to facilitate learning with,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if, and especially if things came easy to us, it's hard to understand that it's not coming easy to someone
Yeah. It's like what
else.
how did you get this? I'm reading this book. I recommend it to everybody. The Digital Delusion.
Mm,
Jared Cooney Horvath. He's a neuroscientist, former classroom teacher, and he's
mhm,
basically questioning, or his premise is that this oversaturation of educational technology is actually
mm,
harming learning. He's not anti-tech, but he is saying we need to, pull back a little bit because it's kind of getting out of control, and it has been for a while. He talks about this concept of expert blindness.
mm,
Get to
mm.
expert status, you forget what it was like when you first learned that thing and you weren't an expert. And then
Right.
you're speaking. That's why a lot of people that are experts, but
Mhm,
they don't know pedagogy. They don't know how to teach. They never learn how to teach, but they're
mhm,
experts at the content. They're horrible teachers.
mhm.
A lot
Same with leadership.
of
Some, yeah, we
one
talk about all of that all the time.
they have these unrealistic expectations for the people that they're responsible for. It's
Hmm.
like I'm up at this level and you're supposed to meet me at this level. Like, no, but I'm down here though. What you need
Right,
leader or a good teacher is come down to this level, meet me here, and then bring me. Let's go up here together.
right,
But a lot of people
exactly.
know how to do that. That's part of pedagogy. They don't know how.
Mhm. How to get you there. That's
So
right.
and they forget what it was like. And I dealt with this because I realized at some point earlier in my career that the more fundamental the math course is, it was
Mhm.
harder for me to teach that class
Uh-huh.
because it's like driving or anything that you do really well.
Yes, right.
Start doing shortcuts, you start taking shortcuts, you take things for granted. You don't think about why you do it. Your muscle memory is so well set in, you don't think about how you do the thing because
That's
you just
right.
do it. So when somebody,
Yeah.
how do you do that? I don't know, I just do it. Like, so hard to teach algebra one for a lot
Mhm.
of us because we take algebra one for granted. Calculus might be a little easier to teach because if I'm not as well versed in calculus, then
Mhm.
I'm thinking more deeply and I'm paying more attention to the detail of okay, because yeah, how do we find this derivative? How do
Mhm.
we integral, right?
That's right.
Not as familiar with it. I'm not an expert at that. So I'm thinking more deeply about, okay, how do I explain this? But
Mhm.
then with the algebra or the arithmetic, there's so much that you take for granted because you've been doing it. Like you could do it in your sleep. So a lot of people need to think about that. There's this concept of expert blindness. So sometimes your expertise can be a hindrance and it can make you a worse teacher if you don't own it and reflect and think about like, am I like how should I explain this? You know?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do know. I
Yeah.
had that experience coming from teaching. I started regularly teaching graduate students, so they were in-service teachers. And then, like, although I had this love for the first year students because I know how they change tradition on college campuses, I started teaching them, and I was like, well, why can't they get it? Like, I mean, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I have to scaffold this much more
Right. Right.
for a freshman, right? Like a first
Yeah.
year student, a student who just left high school,
Yeah.
bells ringing, people telling them what to do. Oh, I have to do that again.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have to learn how to teach. I just wanted to say again, thank you. It has been for too long, mathematics has been framed as a gatekeeper, but
Mhm.
math is not a gate, it's a key. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
And when we reclaim mathematics as a tool for intellectual power, we move from surviving it to mastering it. And mastery builds confidence that spills into every, and I mean every area of life. And that's what we're about, having conversations here about how we are rooted to thrive in this lifetime, in your community, across the nation, across the globe, across the planet. So I want to thank everyone who stopped by and listened to the end. And listen, if you haven't already, please subscribe, share this episode. And I deeply, deeply appreciate all of you. And again, Akil, thank you so much for just dropping knowledge, just nugget after nugget after nugget. We'd be here 2 hours. So we're going to have to stop now, have you come back again. Yes?
Let's make it happen.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
And thank you.
Glad to be here together. All right, Rooted to Thrive Tribe. See you next time.